Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian for Liberty. Check me out at fabianforliberty.com or fabiancalvo.me. I'll post those links down below, and if you opt in on the upper right-hand corner, you'll be one of the first to get my podcast, as well as important email updates and quarterly conference calls, which I think we are getting ready to schedule one of those here in the next week. And we just go over a bunch of your questions and everything else. So, anyways, I want to break down the bombshell information on Harry Reid's Nevada land grab, which we now see basically Harry Reid is an agent of the Chinese government, okay? It's incredible. Now, I mean, when I went into the interview that I did with Greg Hunter over the weekend, which he's now blown the story full open, I mean, the gentleman from Natural News was sending it out to his email list about the criminality that's taking place. He specifically cited my interview with Greg Hunter, because it's so bombshell. It's so crazy. I think most people that are just waking up think about, like, okay, you're just waking up. You're waking up to all this criminality, the Federal Reserve, everything else. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe the federal government is, via the Department of Interior, through the BLM, literally is intimidating, has sniper rifles on ranchers to take their land. That's how hardcore this is, ladies and gentlemen. And keep in mind, this story is much bigger than Clive Bundy, as you're going to see in this video. And it's much bigger than his ranch as well. But let me just start off with that. I did this interview with Greg Hunter at 8:30 on Friday morning. And by then, it wasn't known yet, the Chinese connection. But I certainly reported on it because, as I mentioned in his interview, I actually have a friend who has put together some of these deals that involved this Chinese government and involved land in these particular areas. In this case, it was actually in the California high desert. But point is that all of this land is being categorized right now. And it's being categorized, and I would classify this land grab here on the Bundy Ranch as the categorization point, where they intimidate people by hitting them with letters of fees, all kinds of stuff. And if they don't pay the fees, if they don't comply, then they're hit with literally per diem fines, in some cases hundreds of dollars a day, where they can't obviously keep that up, so they ultimately end up giving in. That's what happened with over 40 different rancher homes and rancher properties in this particular area. So that in and of itself is so bombshell and criminal. However, but the point is that it's much more than that. And here's what I'm going to talk about now, or what I'm going to break down. So we have the categorization of all this land. The second part of this, and this isn't just in the West, ladies and gentlemen, this is happening all over the country. I mean, literally from the day that I talked about this on Friday, and just this morning, the emails have been pouring in of other situations where this is going on in places like Tennessee, in Indiana, in other parts of the country. So we have the criminal BLM that is categorizing all this land. Harry Reid's longtime aide works for the BLM, now runs the BLM, doesn't work there, he runs the BLM, was Harry Reid's longtime aide. Harry Reid's son works for a top law firm in Las Vegas. And he was, in all of them, were preparing and working on the deal where a Chinese solar company was going to put up solar panels in this particular land that we're talking about. Now, that deal fell apart in June 2013, which is one of the things that may not be discussed in the alternative media, but you're going to hear the truth here. So that deal's off, but it really doesn't matter because this is much bigger than Clive and Bundy's. That deal's off because the fact is that Clive and Bundy stood up to the tyrants, and he was been standing up to them. So that stopped that deal from going through that Harry Reid's son was working on. But the point is that now we're in the collateralization stage of, they've categorized all this land, now they're collateralizing it. They're monetizing it. How are they doing that? Well, they're doing that by now putting up these solar fields. Now, let me be clear. I remember, I was just talking to my parents the other day about this, and I remember one of the things we were talking about is, I remember even in high school, when I grew up I went to high school in Las Vegas, I knew even back then that because they would run ads for this land in the classified sections, and they were trying to sell it for a couple $100s an acre. Nobody was buying this stuff. It was just land in the middle of nowhere by like Searchlight, which is on the border between California and Nevada. Or Laughlin, Nevada, which, by the way, is a major solar field that Harry Reid's son is working on. So they've been categorizing all this land to now collateralize it And of course, people that are buying into it and are part of it are the criminals that run this part of town, which is Harry Reid. So I'm sure if real researchers look into this, they'll find that I'm sure there's California senators that are involved in this. I mean, in parts of California, the Chinese are building major solar fields. And they're doing it with their proxies in First Solar, which is an American company, but it's almost the same thing. So, as I mentioned in my video from Friday, there is a reason, ladies and gentlemen, this story is linked to now major deals that have gone down with the Chinese government. And I mean major. We're talking in just the last year, they've allowed USDA Chinese chicken imports into the country. We're talking in just the last year, they've allowed a major battery company that's part of the military-industrial complex to be sold to the Chinese, A123. Look that up. Or we're talking about Smithfield, which I talked about overnight, became the Chinese largest employer in major cities across the country, was the Chinese government. So the Chinese government, in 2008, when the market crashes, we know the criminal mastermind, Hank Paulson, was literally on the phone with them, as he said, pleading for them not to dump our debt. Well, what's happened since then is all part of the global economic reset. They have likely told our government, hey, we'll dump your debt unless you give us, and I should add, their debt has been at the lowest level in the last year, but they're likely coming out and saying, hey, we'll dump your debt or give us all the gold in Fort Knox. Or we'll dump your debt or give us, allow us to import Chinese chickens. Or we'll dump your debt or allow us to build major solar fields, right? That's what's going on here. That's the real story here, is that the Chinese government is now entered, what I would say, their stage of U.S. debt liquidation by trading the debt that we sold them and the worthless bond paper mortgage-backed securities that we sold them. Because that's a whole, I mean, think about it. We completely frauded the international banking cartel that runs the free markets of America, or the once free market, the crony capitalist markets of America. They are all in on this scam as well because they defrauded the Chinese government. So the Chinese government's like, wait a minute, you sold me a bunch of worthless mortgage-backed securities and you told me, no, that's good. Now you want to sell me the treasuries and you're claiming that's good. So I don't really think so this time around. So I want something else in addition to the U.S. debt. What's it going to be, America? That's what's happening here. That's the big story here, should be the big headline here. Not Harry Reid. Well, Harry Reid should be in jail. That should have been the headline 10 years ago. Point is that we have a criminal takeover of the Republic. And right now, they're just divvying it all up. And, Harry Reid, I'm sure, has been promised that he'll continue to be able to have his power and his family will have their power after the global economic reset, which I would doubt if I'm you, Harry Reid. And they're doing all these deals. And if it means kicking off ranchers off their land, it means kicking the ranchers off their land, which they've been doing. So this thing that's gone down with Clive Bundy, though, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, it had the chance to be the Lexington and Concord of the Second American Revolution. It is the classic after-school special of the bullies trying to kick off the good guys from their property. And it didn't happen because people showed up. People showed up. I was willing to show up and bring a bus there on Tuesday if this event or this situation wasn't settled. It apparently looks like it's calmed down and been settled for now, but that could change any hour. I mean, for all we know, literally, because if they had, think about it. The same criminal BLM that stole this rancher's head of cattle, 300 head of cattle, and he claims, Clive Bundy, that they killed the cattle. Think about if I went into any business and I basically took over, let's say it's a store and they sell freaking, what is this? Kombucha, tea, right? Let's say they sell that. And I went into their store and I freaking wreck all of it. Well, guess what's going to happen? They're going to throw me in jail. They're going to call the cops. If I'm still there, they're going to arrest me for destroying private property and destroying a business owner's merchandise. Now, this is a business owner in Clive Bundy. They came in, they stole his cattle, and they killed it. The Harry Reid longtime aide in, what's his face? Named Neil Cornsey should be in jail. He should be literally thrown in jail, but instead they're not. That's a big story in this as well. Criminal government literally committing acts of criminality should be thrown in prison for what they're doing. But it's not happening. But here's an important point. Patriots showed up to stop this insanity, And the quote that was put out by the longtime aide in diffusing the situation specifically spoke to the fact that we showed up, or not we, but people in the liberty movement and patriots showed up with their armed guns, literally. And they said because of the situation on the ground, they've backed down. They weren't expecting this, ladies and gentlemen. They weren't expecting us to show up like we showed up. So kudos to those people. I'm Fabian for Liberty. Thanks for watching. My time's expired. Check me out at FabianForLiberty.com. I'm out.